Good evening again. My name is Disok de Aslan. I am a consultant on behalf of the City of Alhambra for this redistricting process. Before we start with tonight's presentation and workshop, just wanted to take a few minutes to make sure that anyone that needs a translation during tonight's workshop knows where to find that. So if you're listening in and you would like a translation in Mandarin, Cantonese, Vietnamese, or Spanish, if you could please click on that interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. So basically, by clicking on that interpretation button, you'll be able to hear that particular language louder than the English audio. Additionally, if throughout this evening you have any questions, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature that is there at the bottom of your screen as well. That will alert us that you have a question, and as soon as we have a second, we'll ask you that question. If you are calling in, that feature is activated by pressing *9. And when you're called upon to unmute, you would push *6. So again, my name is Disok de Aslan. I'm joined by Andrew Westall and Ho Huerta. We are consultants on behalf of the City of Alhambra. Additionally, we are joined by City of Alhambra staff. And at this time, I will kick it over to our council member, Andrade-Stadler.
Can you unmute yourself, council member?
No.
You're still unmuted.
Wow, okay, it muted me. Thank you so much, Van. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank the residents for being here this evening, taking time out of your busy schedule, getting children in from school, and everybody getting all their stuff in ready for our Thanksgiving break. So thank you for taking time out. I also want to thank Lauren Miles, city clerk, and also Van Nguyen, who is our public information officer. Appreciate all your hard work on this. Buenas tardes, ni hao ma. Thank you, Titzok de Aslan, a familiar place, I think I've been. So I think that's Nawat. Thank you so much for being here along with your the Bear and Associates. We appreciate you being here and giving us an overview of redistricting. We look forward to telling you more about that process and why your participation is so very important. Our consultant, as I mentioned, will give a presentation on how it works. Just a reminder, use your raised hand function. We're not using the chat box this evening. And we'll take your questions at the end unless there's a burning question happening during some of the map description, because it's exciting. It's an exciting presentation. So now I'll turn it over to Tzok. Thank you very much to get started on the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, council member. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started here with tonight's presentation. Again, if at any time you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature. So this is the redistricting workshop for the City of Alhambra. And just a reminder, redistricting every 10 years Districts must be redrawn so that each district is substantially equal in population. We'll go ahead and walk through this presentation here, and certainly, again, if you have questions, we'll take them at the end. So why is redistricting important? Why are we here? How and where districts are drawn can shape communities' ability to elect the representatives of their choice. Districts must be made as equal in population as practical so that communities have equal access to political representation. Just to give you some context as to where we are at in this redistricting process, we are clearly in November. This is the 5th of 5 public workshops that we have had. Next month, we will have a pre-draft map public hearing with a draft map adoption slated for January. We will come back to the public for 2 additional public hearings in February with the goal of having a final map adoption in March. So if you look at the entirety of this timeline, we're still towards the beginning of it. That being said, we're really grateful that you're participating tonight. We're looking to hear from you. Some of the criteria for this process, and again, we'll get into more detail, but the legal criteria for redistricting. First off, you have the equal population principle. There's the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, Voting Rights Act of 1965, and some traditional redistricting criteria, which we will cover now. So basically, traditional redistricting criteria would be contiguity, so as to say all parts of a district should connect. Compactness, we want districts should be geographically compact. We're looking at existing boundaries, so districts should utilize boundaries such as geographic, street, and political boundaries and conform to school attendance zones. And last is communities of interest, so districts should preserve neighborhoods and communities of people sharing common interests. This is the current map of the city of Alhambra. So this is what it currently looks like. If there were to be no changes, this is what would remain, but that's what we're here to discuss tonight. So again, this is all about trying to get as much input from the community as possible. You, the residents, know your city better than anyone. So we're asking for your input throughout this process. Now, how can the public, how can yourselves provide input? First and foremost, you are here attending a public workshop. So we certainly appreciate you being here, spending some time with us this evening. This is the last workshop of 5. That being said, throughout this process, you can always, even when it's not a workshop, you can submit a public comment. Now you can access that through the City of Alhambra's website. There's a dedicated redistricting site with all the pertinent information throughout for this process. So you can certainly submit a public comment form through there. Additionally, if you have an idea of how you would like the districts to be drawn and you would like to draw your own map for consideration, you can certainly do that and email that to lmiles@cityofalhambra.org. If you wanted to take that a step further, there's actually an online mapping tool that you can access through this same website. It's a really useful, pretty user-friendly tool that helps you to draw these maps digitally. So it allows you to check population block by block throughout the entire city to try and, for you to be able to see exactly, what you're putting into each district. You can save your work, come back to it. You can submit as many maps as you want for consideration. But that's certainly another tool that you can use as well. Now, what type of public input are we seeking from the community? Certainly anything that you believe to be important to the process, we would like to hear it. It means that it is important to this process. But some examples of that would be what streets, boundaries, or points of interest define your community? Does your community have major geographical boundaries? Is your community similar to other neighboring communities? And what are your shared interests? Now, why is it important to protect these communities of interest? And that is to preserve communities that share common interests and should be included in a single district in order to have effective and fair representation. So some examples of shared interests are housing patterns, common culture, language, public services, and points of interest. So again, just looking at the schedule of workshops that we had, again, this is the fifth of 5, so we are grateful that you are joining us here tonight. Now, this is just a look into that redistricting site that I mentioned. So again, this workshop is designed to be able to answer any questions that you have in real time. That being said, if at any point you'd like some more information, whether that's later tonight, tomorrow, over the weekend, you can access this site again through the City of Alhambra's website, and all the pertinent information that you need about this process is there. So frequently asked questions. The public comment form that I mentioned previous is accessible there. You can submit directly. If you desire to print it out, maybe you have an older relative or someone that isn't so good with computers. You can certainly just print it out, and that's available in Chinese, Spanish, and Vietnamese as well. And then you would be able to just submit that via email to lmiles@cityofalhambra.org. So and then, there's a form center again. All of the information that's been gathered and it's being used for this process is available to you there. And this is a look at how you access that online mapping tool. So the program is called District Builder. So you would just create your account and access it there. Again, this is just a really useful tool to be able to see in real time, block by block, what the makeup of each block is, by population, by ethnicity, and a lot of pertinent information. That being said, we're trying to provide as much information to you, the residents, as possible through this website, through these workshops. But the old methods, the tried and true methods of contacting your city government still stand. And that's to say, if you would just like to directly send an email to the city clerk, again, that's lmiles@cityofalhambra.org. Or if you'd like to just talk to someone about this process, additionally, you can call 626-570-5090. And again, however it's easiest for you to participate and to be able to have, answer questions for you, or any comments that you'd like included, that's available to you through email, through the phone as well. So that's actually the end of the formal presentation portion, but we're certainly looking to hear from residents as to any questions, comments at this time. So if anyone has a question or comment, again, if you can just use the raise your hand feature, and we'll be sure to call on you. Okay, if we can hear from Charles.
Hi, my name is Charles Kwan, and I am the owner at 1303 Edgewood Drive in Alhambra. I believe I'm in Council District 5. I would like to stay in my council district. I enjoy working with our council member, and I noticed that above Valley, it's a little bit more residential, and I feel in touch with our community over there. So I'm hoping that I can still stay in Council District 5 after this redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment, Charles. Next, Elizabeth.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
I would like to know how residents are made aware of this process or this input time. I know that you mentioned several equal opportunity laws in the very beginning. So is there any sort of outreach plan? Are we making sure that we're meeting the groups that we want to be able to reach? That's it.
You want to cover that a little bit to soak what we've been doing in terms of outreach, and then I can follow up, and maybe Lauren wants to chime in too.
Yeah, certainly. So these workshops are part of that process. So again, we've done social media, we've done mail, we've done email. Trying to access local organizations. Certainly the creation of the website for folks to be able to access the information when they need it. We've provided forms to be able to be downloaded in multiple languages, so very cognizant of making sure that there is no language divide there. We've done our best to be accessible at different days, certainly this process is still happening. So, we're open as well to hearing from residents as to, how to access more people. This is a process that is about engaging with you. So if there is something that you suggest, we're happy to consider that as well.
The other thing I would add is, unlike a lot of other redistricting processes that are going on in the state of California right now, so for instance, LA County Board of Supervisors or the State Assembly and Congress, all of those processes have to be wrapped up by the end of next month. But for the City of Alhambra, because City of Alhambra's election isn't until November of 2022, we have until April of next year to complete this process. And so really we have, a little under 8 weeks, about 7.5 weeks, in which we can continue to gather public comment before we have to publish a draft map on the city's website, which will take place on and around January 17th. And so there's still certainly a lot of time still available for engagement from the public and gathering public comment. And all of that comment can go into the draft map, because certainly the way I prefer to operate, and we've done that in this process, is that we wouldn't do any line drawing until after all of that public input was given, so that we could really take into consideration your comments and other information maps that you may want to submit to help inform this process.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Next is Henry.
I'd like you to explain to me what voter dilution is.
Sorry, Henry, I was on mute, but that's a great question. So when you're dealing with redistricting, and we have to be very careful about minority populations, particularly in Alhambra, we're talking about the Latino population, the Vietnamese population, and the Chinese population in particular. But we have to be very careful that we don't hurt their ability to elect candidates of their choice if there's certain conditions, right? And those conditions include, if there's a large enough concentration of voters, particularly in one part of the city, which is very important, like the 5th district. The 5th district has the highest Latino population in the city. And so if you take the 5th district, for instance, you want to make sure that you're not, as we look at redrawing these boundaries, that you don't dilute Latino voter population. And what dilution means is that you basically take out so many Latinos, let's say, once again, in the 5th district, to the point where it would be very difficult for a Latino to get elected to that particular council district. And there's two ways that people doing redistricting create vote dilution. One way is to pack all of, if you have a large enough concentration of population, packing all of that population into one district, when really the majority could be elect candidates of their choice in more than one district, say 2 districts. And the other way is that they fracture it, and so you could easily split up the Latino community among the 5 districts if you really wanted to. Frankly, it would look pretty ugly because most of the Latinos, at least a large concentration, is on the west side of town. But you could theoretically do it, and by doing that, it's what they call fracturing. And so you're fracturing the Latino vote, unnecessarily, and creating a situation where Latinos couldn't get elected to the Alhambra City Council. And so those are the 2 ways that vote dilution can work. And there are a variety of laws that deal with that, but the Federal Voting Rights Act is basically the premier law in the California Voting Rights Act that prevents that. And so as we go through this process, we certainly look at those issues. We look at the data. If we have any concerns, we share that with city staff and the city attorney to make sure that we're not running afoul of those laws, because we want to do the best job we can for the people of Alhambra.
So that's almost like gerrymandering, huh?
Yeah, yes, and it's certainly, it is done in jurisdictions. It's not, as the consultants for the city, it's not what we do, but it doesn't mean that every demographer in the United States has the same ethical standards. And so, in gerrymandering, while gerrymandering is typically referred to as, creating districts for partisanship, for or against Democrats or Republicans, certainly there's gerrymandering that could be done that, once again, runs against the Federal Voting Rights Act and would be illegal as well, that deals with minority voters.
One last question. It's really hard to get people to participate in the political process. So I was wondering, can you go into the city and print, like let's say I wanted to download the form there, the comment form, and then could I disseminate that to the people in the community and tell them, you know what, I'll go back and pick it up later, just fill it out for me and I'll turn it into the city. Is there a possibility of doing that?
Oh, absolutely, Henry. And there's really 2 ways that we can get people to comment. They can just go to the public comment form that's, which is a fillable form on the city's redistricting website. And once we get into a demonstration here in a second, I'll show you that in a little more detail, but you can either have folks fill it out online, or they can download the PDFs in a variety of languages, and then they can just be returned to the city clerk's office. So either of that works, and certainly we would appreciate your assistance and any other residents' assistance in helping gather that information so that we can, as I said before, make a good decision and an informed decision, and really give the city council the best information we can so that they make a good decision.
Oh, and then, hi, Henry, this is Lauren Miles, the city clerk. I just also wanted to add to what Andrew was saying. In terms of the public comment forms, which are translated, we also have FAQ forms, which are translated. And I'm happy to provide hard copies of any of those forms too, if you want to swing by the office. We're happy to print them out, give you copies of informational presentations that have been translated that were given at previous council meetings. So we're happy to be a resource kind of for anything that you need. We'll be happy to print out anything, provide, copies of any of the forms if it's easier for you to pick them up and then distribute them to neighbors and have, and then turn them back into us. Whatever you need, just feel free to reach out to my office via phone or email or come on in, whatever works best for you.
So much.
Thank you very much for those questions, Henry. Next is Cliff. Cliff, if you can unmute yourself. Cliff, if you have a question, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, and then you can ask the question. And the mute button would be on the upper right-hand corner of your screen.
There we go.
All
No,
right.
it wasn't, I was pushing it, but it wasn't doing anything. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Couple questions. You say that the districts should try to conform with school district zones. Now, are you talking about the overall school district or each individual school board member's district?
So that's a great question, Cliff. So one of the, we look at a variety of GIS information that's provided to us by the city and the county of Los Angeles. And so, as we look at some of these things, one of the things that we can take into consideration are school attendance boundaries. And so, whether it's elementary school or a middle school or a high school, it's not really trying to, certainly we can take into consideration the school board member boundaries, but really it's looking at those individual schools, because as we gather information from the public, we really want to know, where your kids go to school. We want to know, how you view your neighborhood or your portion of Alhambra. Where do you shop? What are the parks that you go to? And so we really have a good understanding of what we call the community of interest for that particular individual or group of individuals, so that we can try to keep that portion of the Alhambra in of the city of Alhambra in one council district. So it's just one of many data points that we try to use to draw to inform ourselves and be able to draw good boundaries that are based on really how the residents of the city of Alhambra view the city.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you have, among the resources that are available to us to look at, do you have anything that would overlay the school attendance zones on top of the district maps, or do we just have to go from looking at a school district map to the council district maps and kind of compare that way?
That's a great question, Cliff. What we'll do is we'll try to get the school attendance boundaries from the school district. And if they can give it to us in a GIS layer, what we can do is we can import it into the district builder program so that you can actually look at it as an overlay. And so that you can see how that matches up with the current council districts or whatever you'd like to map. So we'll certainly work on that. As I said earlier, we do have some time before this process really gets going in terms of draft maps and that sort of thing for council consideration. So we'll see if we can put that together quickly.
Perfect. And then my next question, looking at the demographic profile of the city, just the total population for now, that says 83,109. I'm assuming then that our target is to take that 83,109 and divide it by 5, and that's the average per district?
Yes, that's what they call the ideal population for each district. Okay. And so in the idea is try to get, you want to try to get close to the ideal, but there is some flexibility in the law. And let me explain that a little bit. So when you're dealing with congressional districts, and congressional districts are different than pretty much everything else. But when you're drawing congressional districts like the state commission is doing right now, eventually they'll have to get that down to within one person of each other. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine that the ideal population for a congressional district in California, let's say it's 700,000 people. Well, every congressional district in the state must be within one person of 700,000. So you could have a district that's 699,999. You could have a district that was 700,001, but that's it, right? So it's really, when you're drawing congressional districts, you have to hit one of those three numbers. Now, when you're dealing with state legislative districts like our state assembly and state senate, or you're dealing with local jurisdictions like the City of Alhambra and Alhambra City Council, there is flexibility, and it's what they call the overall deviation. And basically what that means is that you can deviate from the ideal population by a total of up to 10%. And really, if you think about it, and once again, we'll show this a little bit when we get to the demonstration on the online mapping tool, but you can imagine that you can basically go 5% over the ideal population or 5% under the ideal population. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be just those 5%, but for simplicity purposes, think of it that way. So, so let's imagine that a council district in the City of Alhambra was 20,000 people, right? And so 5% less than 20,000 would be 19,000, and 5% over would be 21,000. And so with a local jurisdiction like Alhambra, you do have that flexibility in that example of about 1,000 people each way. And really, you also have to be able to justify why you deviated from those ideal populations. And so if we're using natural boundaries like the 10 freeway or major streets like Garfield or Valley or Main Street, if we're using those major streets, then we have the justification we need to be able to deviate. And it really allows at the local level to be able to draw districts which really conform once again to the neighborhoods of the city, as opposed to trying to chop up a neighborhood just trying to get to that population equality. And so as you'll see through this process, we do have some flexibility. As you saw in the demographic profile, there's a deviation of, I believe, 4.2%, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. And so currently there's some deviation in the districts, but you always want to keep that under 10%.
Okay, well, as it stands right now, everything seems to be under 10%. So does that mean that we could keep things the same as they are now, or are we obligated to try to do better?
That's a great question too. And certainly one of the options that the council has is to adopt the current map, as long as it meets all of the other criteria, the legal criteria that we went over earlier. And as you can see on the screen, so certainly the current council districts are contiguous. They are relatively compact, and they use existing boundaries. And you also have to make sure that they comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And we haven't done that analysis yet because we want to see get some direction from the council about how to proceed. But all of those things take into consideration. But conceivably, if all of that criteria is met with the current map, the council could just adopt the current map. Now, that being said, we have had comments. This is our 5th workshop, and we have had comments from folks that live in places like Granada Park, right, which is south of the 10 freeway, who would like to be all in one council district. And so by putting all of Granada Park into one council district, that would change some things because there is some population there. And so it just really depends on the amount of public input that we get and the direction we get from the council to come up with a map. And certainly I think we can do a little better than the current map, but that's not my decision. That's just my advice.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for those questions, Cliff. And just a reminder, as Andrew is mentioning, a lot of these things, there's certain legal criteria that needs to be met, but that deviation is all based on information that we're trying to receive from you, the community. So there are numbers and things like that, but the human component of what do you believe to be your community? What should be kept intact? Those questions that we have from you are what help us to actually refine the map to go just beyond numbers and population. So again, any any comments, any considerations that you believe, even if you don't think it's that big a deal, we're certainly, we'd love for you to draw us a map of the entire city, breaking up districts. But maybe you just want to comment on your street. Maybe you just want to comment on your community, and that's perfect too. It's whatever information you'd like to add to this process. We'd certainly like to hear it. So, are there any additional questions from our attendees?
So while we're waiting to see if anybody else has a question, why don't we go into the online mapping tool demonstration? We can show folks that, and that might generate another set of questions from the public.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew.
Sure. And just give me a second here. I was actually looking up where Edgewood Drive was earlier, based on the comment that we got. So wanted to make sure I understood where that was. There we go. All right. So, and thanks once again for everyone joining us this evening. This is actually the largest turnout we've had of the 5 workshops. So Councilmember, kudos to you, because you've outdone all of the other members. And so we really appreciate the turnout and the public participation. What we're starting with here is the City of Alhambra's redistricting website. And as you can see, as we've talked about, there's a variety of information here in terms of facts. You have the demographic profile that Cliff was talking about earlier up here in the corner, along with all of the presentations that we've done for the council in terms of in different languages, right? So we have mostly everything is translated into Chinese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. You can also on the right-hand side here find all of the videos for all the workshops or the council meetings that have taken place on this subject as well. As you go down the page, you can see the other dates that are coming up. And so after tonight, we'll be back in front of the Alhambra City Council on December 13th to get more public comment and to get some direction from the council. As we've talked about earlier, the draft map is scheduled to be adopted by the City Council on January 24th. And based on state law, that draft map has to be published on this website at least 7 days in advance, and so by January 17th. And so, once again, really, we have about 7.5 weeks to gather as much information as possible. And if you want to submit information or provide a map to the city to be considered as part of that draft map, I would suggest that you try to get anything that you want to in by January 10th, so we can take that into consideration. In terms of the online mapping tool, there are a couple places where you can access it. And so at the top of the page, there's a link right here on the left where you can access the online mapping tool. And once again, at the bottom of the page, there's another link right here or right here in which you can access the online mapping tool. And so we're going to take you there now. And so what you do is you just click on the link, and you can either wait or just click on proceed to the site. And it will take you to this landing page that Tasok showed you earlier for the City of Alhambra. If you want to get back to the city's redistricting website, the link is right up here at the top. And there's a little bit of summary information here in terms of the process. As I mentioned before, the city has to be completed with this process in April 17th, in fact, of next year. And so just once again, a little summary information. And what the website will allow you to do is will allow you to create your own map from scratch, right? And we'll start there in a minute, or you can use the current city council districts and just make some modifications. So the first thing that you want to do up here on the right-hand side of the page is you want to register. And so you click on the register and you put in your name, email, and password, and then that would take you straight to the site. I'm not going to do that because I already have an account, so I'll just log into my account here. And it will take me once again back to this home page. And so as you can see also, we have 12 people that are actively working on drawing maps. Probably a couple of these are our staff, so that number isn't quite that high, but as people join the site and want to draw their own maps, you'll see this number grow up here. But in terms of actually drawing a map, why don't we start with a blank map of the city of Alhambra. So we'll use this template on the left. And as you can see, there's a variety of features here, and I'll walk you through most of them this evening so that you can understand how this works. So as we were talking about with Cliff earlier, the city's population is 83,108. And so that's the total population of the city that needs to be allocated between the 5 city council districts. Your ideal population for each district is 16,621. And so as we go about building districts, you'll see these numbers change, and I'll explain what it means when they change and when you see this arrow turn into different things. You can also look at the ethnic composition of the city, right? And so the ethnic composition of the city is 52% Asian, 36% Latino, and 8% white. And as you can see the other numbers there. And as you build districts, you'll be able to see the composition of each of the areas or districts that you build as well. So that's what is shown over here on the, once again, on the left-hand side. Up here on the top, you really have 3 different tools in which you can draw a district. And so the first one is a point and click. And so you can just click different areas and build a district that way. And as you can see, when you select on an area, it'll give you once again, the ethnic composition of that particular block group. You really have 2 levels of geography in which you can draw districts on. And I would recommend that you start with the block groups because it's a larger area of geography, as you can see. And then when you want to refine things, you can go down to the census block level. And as you can see, the census block level is much smaller, right? And it's really almost block by block. And so as you look at different areas and you want to straighten and smooth out lines along main streets, like Main Street, or other streets, like maybe Garfield or Mission Road, then you can do that at the census block level. So once again, you can use the point and click to just select areas. You can just draw a triangle, right, and go over a bunch of areas. Or you can use a paintbrush and you just hold down your mouse clicker as you drag it along among various areas to select. If you don't like what you're doing, you can always come up here and hit cancel, and that'll take you right back to the beginning. And if you do like what you're doing, we can hit accept. When you are going back and forth between districts, right, and we'll start with District 1, but you're going to want to make sure that you go back and forth, and you click on, and you can see how it's a little gray shaded area, but make sure that you're drawing each district and you know which district you're working on at any particular time. So you want to make sure that you shuttle back and forth between the districts as you're building them, so you don't put all the population in one district. But the software helps you recognize when you're making those errors, and I'll explain that in just a second as well. So why don't we start with District 1? Right. So since we're in District 5, and we're doing the District 5 workshop tonight, why don't we start on the west side of town? And so we'll just use the clicker, the point and click. And so as you can see with just selecting that area, right, it changed District 1, that's 2,186 people, but we still got to go and find 14,435 more people to get to that equal population. So we can come down and just click along, watch that number increase over there. All right. So that whole area there is a complete district. When you get to a district that's within that deviation that we were talking about, that 10% or lower than that 10%, it will give you a green check, right? And if you just scroll on it, as you can see, it tells you that the district meets the population deviation tolerance. And so that's a good district for us in terms of District 1. And we'll hit accept. And there we have it. There's our first district. So once again, remember, you want to come back over here to the left and click on the next district so we can start a new one. And this time, why don't we use the paintbrush, and we'll just paint along, let's just see, paint along 10 freeway here and see where we get. All right. And so with those block groups right there, we have a population of 16,538. We got our green check mark, right? And we're just under deviation by 83 people. So that's another good district. And then you'd hit accept on that as well. There we go. So please don't get frustrated with the this website too much. It does sometimes, as you can see right there, it took a second to load, but it's a lot of information it's processing all at once. And so, you know, just be a little patient, and you'll do just fine. You don't want to get too frustrated with the website while you're having fun here. So with that, let's go to another district. Let's create another one here. And so this will be our District 3. I'll go back to the point and click since we're getting, we've got some other stuff going on here. So why don't we just take this area right here for now, see what that gives us. So if we just took that area there, it's 14,703 people, but we still need to find 1,918 people to try to get to some equality here. So with that, why don't we click on another area, and that does it, right? So we're once again, we have deviation of negative 567 people, but we got that green check that we're looking for. So that district's 16,054 people. So we'll go ahead and hit accept again, and there we have our District 3. So once again, if you go over here and you click on the next district, make sure you're working on the right district there. So we'll start with District 4. Go back to using the paintbrush here. And why don't we see what we can do? So just keep moving up. And so if that area isn't quite enough for a district, we still need 3,655 people. So I don't know, let's see. Maybe we come down here. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? Maybe down here. There we go. All right. This area, once again, it's a complete district in terms of population. We got a green check mark over here on the left. So we have district with 16,707 people, and it's just over deviation by 86 people. And so that's good to go. So once again, we'll hit accept. And now we'll go to District 5. And just remember, as I said before, make sure you're clicking on the right district here that you want to work on. Even I forget to do that sometimes. So we'll just go through and we'll pick up the rest of the city here. And that gets us there. You can check up here at the top where you want to get to 0 here so that all the population in the city is allocated into the 5 council districts. And it'll give you a green check up here when all of it's been assigned. And as you can see, we got green checks across the board. So we're within our deviation tolerance. So we've met our population equality standards. and we can hit, let's go ahead and hit accept on that. All right. So there's 5 districts. You know, and it's, as I mentioned before, you know, it's always good to use the block groups to start with, and then we can come down and really refine around the edges as you understand the city of Alhambra and what makes the most sense in terms of population and where those natural boundaries are once again. As we talked about earlier, over here on the left, you can scroll over and you can see the ethnic composition of each one of the districts. Our District 1 here has a 48% Latino population and 39% Asian. Our District 2 has a 59% Asian population and 32% Latino. Our District 3 here is 50% Asian, Asian population and 40% Latino. District 4, as you can see once again on the screen, has an Asian population of 62% and Latino population of 29. And then lastly, our District 5 there also has a majority Asian population of 51% and a Latino population of 33%. And so you can look at those various things. The other thing you can do is go up to this evaluate button up here on the top of the right-hand side of the page. And if you click on the evaluate button, it'll take you through some of the checks that you want to check in terms of the legal requirements, as we talked about before. And so equal population, right, as we talked about, utilizing the deviation, we're 5 for 5, and so we're good there. Contiguity, all 5 of our districts are contiguous, right? You don't have a piece of District 4 up here in the corner, and then, you know, that's not connected to the rest of District 4 here. So we have contiguity. When you come down into the optional things here, competitiveness is not something that you'll see in the state of California when you're doing redistricting at the local level for cities and counties and school districts and special districts. You can't use partisanship data. And so this is just an option that this website has. If you were doing, say, a state legislative plan, then you could look at kind of the Dem, Republican, Independents, and other minor party breakdown. Compactness, as we talked about, is important, but it's not the most important criteria. Certainly, you want to try to draw compact districts to the extent feasible, but given the geography of the city and the neighborhoods, that just might not be the ideal, because neighborhoods aren't always square, right? And so compactness is important, but it's, you know, once again, it's one of these more optional standards. As we talked about before, you certainly don't want gerrymandered districts, but these are relatively compact districts that we have here. And certainly we can make them more compact, but they do the job in terms of the law. You can also look at, yes.
We actually have a question, if you don't mind. It might pertain to what you're going through now. Charles, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. This is a sample, correct? We're just doing a sample right here, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is just a demonstration.
Okay, because like, for example, in the city of Los Angeles, they do have districts that are not contiguous with one another, but I like the concept of having contiguity where everything's sort of connected. But yes, thank you very much. That's all. Thank you.
Sure, not a problem, Charles. And that's a great question. There are certainly some cities, you know, all counties are contiguous, you know, in terms of their geography, but there are a lot of cities which have non-contiguous parts. And you have quite a lot of that in the San Gabriel Valley, in the eastern San Gabriel Valley, because you have unincorporated pockets. Sometimes you have a water reservoir up in the hills that was annexed as part of a city. You know, there's two places in the city of San Bernardino that are like that are not connected to the rest of the city. And so in cases like that, there's not much you can do about contiguity. You can imagine, you know, we have state assembly and legislative seats, state senate seats and congressional seats. We have islands in the state of California, right? And so some of those districts are not contiguous, because Catalina Island, which is part of the state of California, has to be in the district somewhere. And so sometimes it's unavoidable, but only in those cases are you allowed to draw non-contiguous districts based on those reasons. You can also look at the majority-minority split in terms of the districts. And so, under this rendition here, we have 5 Asian majority districts and 1 coalition district, which is the coalition district is mostly Latino, but it's not quite a majority in terms of those numbers. And so you can check those demographics as well. And this last part here, block group splits, is not that important because once again, we're dealing with a small geography like the city of Alhambra, and we really want to get down to the census block level to straighten and smooth out some of these lines. And I'll show you a little bit how we do that. So if you want to get out of the evaluate section, you just hit this X mark up here and just click on that, and it'll take you back to your map. And let's see here. So we got a little funky geography going on right here. We've got Atlantic Boulevard here, Valley Boulevard here, over to 6th Street. And this probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to anyone that lives in the city of Alhambra. So why don't we straighten it out a little bit and see what happens. So as I said, block groups, your bigger geography, census blocks, your smaller geography. And so why don't we look at our purple district here, which is District 3, adding in, let's say, the section between 6th and Valley and Atlantic on the north side of Valley Boulevard. So you just click on these. And once again, you just want to keep your eye on those check marks. But that seems to be fine. Didn't really it changed our deviations a little bit, but not in a bad way. Once again, we have green check marks all across the board here. And so we can accept that. And certainly, at least in my opinion, Valley Boulevard is a more natural boundary than what I think is Storb Street, but I can't quite see the name there. Or Shorb Street, excuse me. So it kind of rounds things out a little bit, made a little more sense there. You can also, let's take the this other district here, which I think is our District 2. Maybe we just want to straighten it out once again at 6th Street. We still have our green check marks there, so we can accept that. And so, as I was saying earlier, you can really use the census blocks to kind of smooth out the boundaries based on the way that you understand the city, and just keep working at it. And if you get to a place where you're kind of moving things around and you don't have those green check marks, you just want to keep rotating and working the districts around until you get back to that population equality that we're looking for. But as I said before, this really gives us a 5 districts that meet population equality and contiguity. As I said before, we certainly would want to make sure that we are still complying with the U.S. Constitution and with the Federal Voting Rights Act. But that's really something as the consultants for the city, we do tests on to test those issues and make sure we don't have any legal compliance problems. So with that, once again, this is building it from scratch, and those are all of those tools. One last thing I would point out is this export function up here is really something that you would use if you're really into GIS and GIS mapping. You can export out the map that you create into what's called an Esri shapefile or to a GeoJSON file, and that would allow you to import your map into pretty much any standard GIS software that's available out there. And so it's not something that most people would use, but just know that feature is there available for you as well. So with that, why don't we go back to the landing page here. So we just drew a city council district map from scratch. Why don't we look at the current city council map and see if we'll make some adjustments. So as I was saying earlier in the program, One of the areas that we heard a lot of public comment from in our first workshop was this area known as Granada Hills. And Granada Hills, or excuse me, not Granada Hills, Granada Park. I'm in the wrong city. So Granada Park, which is a park right here south of the 10 freeway. And we got some public comments that the folks that live between the city boundary here and the 10 freeway and Fremont Avenue really wanted to be in a district with the rest of Granada Park, with the rest of their community over here. So once again, and this is just a demonstration, but just why don't we see what that looks like and see where that gets us. So our brown district here, that's district number 4. So remember, you want to come over here and click on district 4 so we can work on district 4. And then we'll just start by selecting these 2 areas. And it's certainly going to put us out of population compliance, but we'll come back and fix that. But as you can see, it's switched, and so we got a district 4 now that has 2,000 too many people, and a district 5 that needs about 3,000 people. But why don't we go ahead and accept that, so we can start there and kind of see what that looks like. Then what we can do is we got to fix district 4 or district 5. I remember district 5 is the one that doesn't have enough population here. And so once again, clicking on district 5 so we can work on that. It's always easier to take population out of the district that has extra population. So instead of coming up here and kind of looking in district 3, we really want to try to make some of these trades down here in order to make this work. And so once again, we'll see if we can even out the population in district 5. See if we select this area here and this area here. So that's so if we select these 2 areas, as you can see with district 4, we have enough population in district 4, but district 5 still needs to pick up some to get back in, get that green check mark that we're looking for, right? And this program is so easy to use. It actually tells you the number of people that you need to get under that 5%, which is just under 1,000 people. But why don't we start with this and see what we get. And we'll accept that. And so this is our new district 5, but remember, we still don't have enough population yet. So, sometimes when you're getting to these lower numbers, maybe you want to straighten something out a little bit, because this is pretty nice clean lines here on the bottom of district 5. And so maybe, yeah. Is that Raymond Avenue? Yeah, why don't we come up Raymond Avenue here since we already started and take a little bit out of District 3 and see where that takes us.
Andrew, we actually have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Sure. Professor Michelson?
Hello. I apologize if you have already answered this at some point, but I'm curious if this program reveals general household income.
Yes, that's a great. Yeah, that's a great question. Let's see.
Thank you.
So as you can see on the side here, we have a variety of data points, and you can actually label each one of these block groups or census blocks with this data. But we have not just ethnic population data, we also have, there's also ethnic voter registration data. And this is from the 2020 general election. So this is just the number of registered voters for each of these subgroups. And as we talked about before, we certainly have a very large Chinese population in Alhambra, got a nice sized Vietnamese population as well as Latino population. You also have data here that'll give you information on how many of those subgroups voted in the 2020 general election. And so you can see the difference between registration and actual voter turnout by ethnicity. And then you have household income is one thing that you can look at. So you can look at areas in which there's, this is less, the household incomes of less than 35,000, 35 to 75,000, and so forth. Down here, we have, this is educational attainment. And so population that doesn't have any high school diploma, people that have a high school diploma, but no college diplomas, and then folks that have college diplomas. You can also look at owners and renters in terms of ownership as opposed to renters in different areas. You also can look at language. And so where people only speak English, where Spanish is prominently spoken, and where Asian and Pacific Islander languages are also spoken. And then the last statistic that we use here that you can also look at is poverty. And so you can look at folks that are below poverty or at or above poverty. So that was a great question. But yes, there are a variety of other data that you can look at that will give you information in each of these areas. And you can, for instance, if we wanted to look at, let's see, housing units, right? So that'll tell you how many people or how many housing units are in each one of these census block groups. So as we were trying to find population here for District 5, well, until we took the question, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of people that live in this area right here. It's mostly that industrial area along Raymond Avenue. And so you can do things like that. If you wanted to look at, okay, where are the renters, right? You can see, particularly up here, in the northeastern portion of the city, there's a lot of apartments down here between Mission and Valley, and roughly Atlantic and Raymond there. And then there's also a lot of renters down here in this section around Granada Park that we were talking about earlier. But you can look at different statistics and really, when we can look at homeowners, right? Same sort of thing. You can see where the home ownership's really prevalent. Once again, down here in this area of the city and the western edge of the city, got a lot of home ownership kind of on the edges of the city as well. But you can look at all of those different statistics as you go through this process. So with that, why don't we finish up what we're doing here? So we're trying to see if we could find some more population here to add to District 5 to get it back into population compliance. So that doesn't quite get us there. Oh, that's why. Okay. My apologies. As I said earlier, sometimes I forget to select the right districts myself too. So why don't we select District 5 again, and we'll start coming up here and picking up people. And so, we're not quite there yet, but we'll take that in. Once again, gives a nice clean line there up Raymond Avenue. And why don't we go down to the census block level? And once again, if you're having difficulty, you just go over to the label here. You can look at population and say, hey, we got, we're trying to get, around, and then once again, it'll tell you, we're trying to get at least 568 people. And it looks like this section between Ethel Avenue and Marengo, there's enough people right there. So why don't we go ahead and select that?
Andrew, if I can, just for a second, just a reminder to folks, certainly if you have any questions, please use that raise your hand feature. But additionally, as you can see, this is just a demonstration on how you would go about, building your own map if you would like to do that. So if you're so inclined to create your own online map, this is the process you would use. But I would also ask, if you don't intend to submit a map, if we are currently going through an area of your city that you would like to comment on, again, it could be as simple as everyone in this particular area goes to a specific church, we all share a same school, whatever information that you think is pertinent. We're looking at population, we're looking at a lot of information that we can gather from demographics. But you, the residents who know the city best, if there's something that you'd like to comment on while we're going through this demonstration, I ask that you please do so. So back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. So as we were just talking about, we're going to try to add this population into District 5. It gets us back into population compliance. We've got our green check back here again. So we can accept that. And we're kind of back to where we started here. And so once again, this is maybe what something would look like if we put all of Granada Park into one district. This whole area, everything south of the 10 freeway in Alhambra, all in one city council district. And it might look something like this, but it gives you an idea of how you can, take different neighborhoods and try to put them together and see what kind of maps that you come up with. So with that, that concludes the online mapping demonstration. Certainly happy to take any further questions that you might have, but hopefully that was helpful in showing you how you want to walk through these maps and how you can draw your own maps. And once again, if you have any questions, if you need information or you need technical assistance, please reach out to the city clerk's office. Lauren Miles is one of the I would say one of the best city clerks certainly that I've worked with in Los Angeles County, and she's extremely helpful and can really provide you with the information that we can get to you. And if you just need a few moments of my time to work through some of those technical questions, I'm happy to do that as well.
Actually,
Andrew,
have
it looks
a
like-
couple questions.
yeah,
Oh,
two
sorry,
questions.
Councilmember. Yeah, if we can have Cliff ask his question.
I'm not sure if you can answer this or not. Maybe Adele can. What happens if your new map moves a council member out of their current district?
That's a great question. So what the state law says is that you can't draw maps based on incumbent protection. And what that means is it doesn't mean that you disregard incumbency completely, but you don't want to, and we've thrown around some of these terms earlier, but basically you don't want to gerrymander the city council map in such a way that, you're just doing it based on where incumbents live and not keeping neighborhoods whole. The whole reason that we have a California Fair Maps Act in the state of California, which was just adopted in 2019, was because in the city of Martinez, which is up in the Bay Area, just kind of on the East Bay side in the Bay Delta, the city of Martinez, which just went to district elections, their council members, all 4 of them lived in the same neighborhood in the city of Martinez. And so they actually drew a map in the city of Martinez, which split every neighborhood in the city because their justification is that, well, we should represent everybody. And so we should have a little bit of every single neighborhood. And that's something you just can't do. In my professional experience, typically there isn't a good reason to move an incumbent out of their district unless there's a legal reason to do so. And so once again, things like Voting Rights Act compliance might be a good reason to do so. Just to give an example, 20 years ago, I worked on a map for the Los Angeles City Council, which took a council member by the name of Ruth Galanter, who lived in the Venice Mar Vista area, and took her district and completely collapsed it and put it into the San Fernando Valley. Well, the reason that we did that was because the Latino population in the Northeast San Fernando Valley had grown so much that there had to be 2 council districts that Latinos could elect a candidate of their choice in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. And so, the reason why Ms. Galanter was the one that got chosen was because she was termed out, and the other council member who represented the west side of the city of Los Angeles still had 3.5 years in her term. And so Councilmember Galanter actually moved out to Van Nuys and represented that area for 1.5 years until she was termed out. But it's really, once again, because of reasons like that, that you would move an incumbent out. It's also important to understand that unlike the state process, which is an independent process, the city council has the final decision. And so certainly at the end of the day, you want to produce a map that they're comfortable with and that they would vote for as well. Councilmember, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but I hope
No,
that was a good
I
explanation.
wanted to say, you probably know this, Andrew, and I'm just reminding the residents that are online that we are actually going from at-large voting to by district voting for the very first time. And that means there's those challenges of people who may have gotten more votes in one area and it wasn't necessarily in their neighborhood, now has to make that adjustment because we're going by district. So that in itself is a challenge for. I have a question for you. When we are looking at population within these these maps, right? You're taking into account overall population. So that includes children and grandparents and you're not really looking at voting population, are you?
No, yeah, to your point, Councilmember, we're looking at strictly total population. We do look at what's called citizen voting age population, but only for, once again, compliance with the U.S. Constitution and the Federal Voting Rights Act. So it's really population that we look at, and then we check that citizen voting age population numbers, or what in redistricting parlance we call CVAP. We want to be able to check that to make sure that we're complying with those laws. But that's really the only time we look at those things.
Okay, and then I have one more question. If you have a minority area, and then all of a sudden you remove people from it, and it's no longer a majority minority, does that jive with the CVRA? Is that you know what I mean?
Yes. No, I understand completely. In general, so certainly in the current council districts, right, you have one that's a Latino majority, and you have you have two that are Asian majority and two that are very close to Asian majority districts. And so as we look at Voting Rights Act compliance, we want to make sure that we try to keep that balance to the extent possible. And it really, once again, depends on the growth of the city. But as you know, Councilmember, there wasn't a lot of growth in the city over the last 10 years. And so we look at all of those things to make sure that we're compliant, and we basically want to keep the makeup as the same. As the Councilmember talked about earlier, up until now, the City of Alhambra had elections in which you would run from a particular district, like from Council District 5, but you would be elected by all the voters of Alhambra. And so this is the first time that next time that the council member comes up for re-election, she'll only be elected or voted on by the voters of the 5th district, as opposed to the entire City of Alhambra. And so that's a change from the past, and something that the city needed to move towards based on the potential for litigation. But I think we'll get there. And frankly, the 5 districts that are there today do a pretty good job of providing representation by district that you would like to see. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how folks reorient themselves to get elected in those district elections, not just you, council member, but the entire council and any candidates for that matter.
Thank you so much.
We had a question from Aristotle. I'm not sure, you just unclicked yourself there. If you still have a question, go ahead and ask it now, please.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was waiting to hear everything that was being discussed, because that was exactly what I was going to mention, was the importance of having Latino representation amongst at least 2 of the districts, and just making sure that everything was balanced and the way that things were being reshaped.
No, it's a great point, Aristotle. And what I would say is this: as I've been looking at the geography of the city, certainly you have one Latino majority district, and you probably have 2 areas of the city which I would call Latino influence areas. Outside of the west side of Alhambra, the Latino population is spread out, and so it's I don't think it's feasible to draw 2 Latino majority districts, but you can have coalition districts between Latinos, Asians, and other folks. So I think that's that's currently what the current council districts do, and I think that's what's likely at the end of this process. But ultimately, it's up to the council to decide which map they like the most.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions? Again, if it's just a comment on your particular community, your district, we're happy to hear it. Certainly any questions about this process, we're happy to answer those at this time as well. I think I speak for all of us here that there have been some really awesome questions, a lot of back and forth, so we appreciate everyone that's provided some input for us today.
Thank you. So I want to thank actually Tissa and Mr. Westfall for providing such a broad view as to what our redistricting will look like. I encourage residents, get your neighbors involved and take a look at the map online. That's actually kind of fun. I can already tell my husband's going to be at it for a while, checking out, the numbers, because he's a map kind of guy. We had to have those maps when we were traveling. So, but this concludes our presentation for tonight. We have several more redistricting workshops planned this month. So, well, actually, we don't have too many, except we have some is it December? That we are bringing one up, because I'm just reading this little script here and I don't think it's appropriate. I'm the last one. I'm the last one hosting for the council.
You're the last public workshop.
That's it.
Correct.
And so we encourage everybody to continue to bring in your comments. Everybody matters. Bring them in not only for the 5th district, but what you want to see in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and 4th as well, right? Because this is all about doing things with our community and making sure that we're doing things not for elected officials, but for our community. And we need to do it correctly, right? For the next 10 years. So I invite you to look at the data that's online there. Look at who we are in each district. Look where we sit, where we reside. Look at the continuity and the connections. Those are important. And enjoy and get your comments in before, I think you said January 15th. Is that what you said? Oh.
January 10th.
January 10th. However,
Yes.
we do have a December 13th draft map that we are looking at. December 13th is the big date. So try and get your comments in before that so we can look at a few draft maps that community has participated in. So with that, I thank you very much and continue to look up on the website for more information. And you can always call any one of us to get information as well. Okay. Anything else? I think that's it.
All right, I think that was it. Thank you very much, council member. Appreciate the community for joining us tonight. Again, we went through the entire process, did a lengthy demonstration there on the online mapping tool. That being said, as the council member mentioned, any questions about this process, the city clerk is available via email, via phone. That website is there for you. We certainly hope that you invite others, your neighbors, to participate in this process as well. This is a very important process. Again, these lines that are drawn will be there for the next 10 years. So if there's something that you think is important, again, I can assure you it'll be important to us and this process. So again, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to hearing from you again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.